Okay, so today our topic of discussion will be salts preparation. First of all, let's discuss about two different type of salts. The one salts. Just- Okay, so now let's discuss about different type of salts. The one is soluble salts, and the other one is insoluble salts. Insoluble salts. So what are soluble salts and what are insoluble salts? There's a very simple way to memorize them, and that is okay. First of all, let's discuss about soluble salts. So span, just remember this thing, span. What it becomes from spans, S means sodium salts, potassium means, P means potassium salts, A means ammonium salts, N means nitrate salts. These all salts, they are said to be the soluble salts. Okay, they are said to be the soluble salts. All of the sodium salts are soluble, all of the potassium salts are soluble, all of the ammonium salts are soluble, all of the nitrate salts are soluble. So let's move further that all chlorides, they are soluble, but there are some exceptions in chlorides, which are silver chloride, which is an insoluble salt. Then we have lead chloride, which is also insoluble salt. So there are only two insoluble chlorides. All other chlorides are soluble in water. Let's talk about all sulfates. They are soluble, but there are some exceptions which are associated with it. The one is barium sulfate, and the other one is calcium sulfate, and the other one is lead sulfate. So they are basically insoluble in water. Okay. So all carbonates, most of the carbonates are insoluble. So all carbonates are are insoluble, except which carbonates are soluble? So there are three carbonates. SPA. I'm writing SPA. SPA means sodium carbonate is soluble. Potassium carbonate is soluble. Then we have ammonium carbonate. Ammonium carbonate is also soluble salt. Okay. So this is uh, a whole about the soluble salts and insoluble salts. So you have to memorize them. Okay. Let's move further towards next topic, and that is preparation preparation of salts. First of all, boys, there are basically we know that there are two types of salts. The one is soluble salts, and the other one is insoluble salts. So there are different methods which are prepared, which are required to prepare soluble salt and insoluble salt. The method by which we can prepare an insoluble salt, that method is basically said to be as precipitation method. precipitation method. And for soluble salts, we are going to use two methods. The one is titration. Okay. And the other method is excess method. I just want to describe them a little over here. So in excess method, what happens? First of all, let's talk about titration method. In titration method, we prepare three types of salt, that is sparse salts, which are sodium salts, potassium salts, and ammonium salt. Just remember this thing, like that only for these three type of salts we are going to use titration method, that is sodium salts, potassium salt, and ammonium salt. And the method that we are going to use here, that would be uh, acid reacts with alkali, by which we can manufacture these salts in titration, or acid reacts with carbonate solution, with carbonate solution. Okay. First of all, these are the salts and these are the ways through which we are manufacturing. Let's talk about excess method. In excess method, we are going to use either acid plus excess metal, either they are reacted, then either acid plus excess insoluble base, like magnesium oxide is an insoluble base, copper oxide is an insoluble base, or acid plus excess insoluble carbonates. Insoluble carbonates. Okay. For precipitation method, so I hope that these points are clear to you, that in excess method, we are going to use acid plus excess metal, acid plus excess insoluble base, acid plus excess insoluble carbonates. For titration method, we are going to prepare three types of salts, that is sodium salts, potassium salts, and ammonium salts. We are going to use a process that is acid plus alkali and acid plus carbonate solution. Moving further towards precipitation method. So precipitation method is basically used to prepare an insoluble salt. Okay, and how it is prepared? By mixing two soluble solution. Mixing two soluble solution. The process which is associated with precipitation method is quite simple. So first, let's look out the process of precipitation. Precipitation. Okay. So first of all, this process is used to make an insoluble salt. ठीक है. अच्छा, एक insoluble salt कैसे बनता है? By mixing two soluble solution. अच्छा, two soluble solution. What could be the reaction in it? That could be, for example, we want to prepare AgCl. AgCl, we have just studied that it is an insoluble salt. So it is prepared by mixing silver nitrate plus HCl. This is aqueous form. Why aqueous? Because we have read that all nitrates are soluble. So that is soluble in water. That would be in aqueous form. That would also be in aqueous form. And they would be reacted to form AgCl, which is in solid precipitates. Why? Because it is insoluble in water. And that could be HNO3 in aqueous form. But what is actually happening here? Uh, First of all, we are going to take HCl, HCl in a beaker, and then we are going to add this AgNO3, okay? This AgNO3 in it, AgNO3 in it. Then what happens? Suddenly, the white precipitates of AgCl would form, okay? So, first of all, let's write down the steps over here, like add HCl and AgNO3, okay, and mix them together with a stirrer. Then what happens? Suddenly, white precipitate of silver chloride would form. When white precipitate of precipitate would form, white precipitate would form, then pass pass them through filter paper, through filter paper. So what happens when we are passing them through filter paper, then white precipitate, white precipitate would remain on surface of filter paper. Okay, surface of filter paper. When the precipitates remain on the surface of filter paper, then what we are going to do, we are going to wash the precipitates with distilled water, with distilled water. Okay, and dry them in folds of filter paper. Dry them in folds of filter paper. So boys, you need to remember these all steps. Filter paper. So in this way, we will be able to get the insoluble salts, and by this precipitation method, what happens when two soluble salts are mixed? Then precipitates forms. We are going to separate them with filter paper, and then we are going to wash them with distilled water. Why we are using distilled water? Because mineral water might contain some minerals which would contaminate the product. So that is why we are using this. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are going to discuss about excess method. First, we know that excess method is used to prepare soluble salts. Okay, so now we are going to use, first of all, we are going to use metal plus acid to form salt and hydrogen. The important thing that we must need to discuss here, that only reactive metal, reactive metal such as magnesium, aluminium, iron, or zinc. That is basically you when reacting metal with acid. Why? Because the metals which are at the top, like sodium, potassium, calcium. They are too reactive to react with this acid because the reaction would become quite explosive. It would not be recommended. Okay, and these are like too much reactive, too reactive. Okay, and the other one is like unreactive are silver, copper, silver, or wood. They are quite unreactive. So they are unable to react with acid. So they both of them are not recommended to use it with acid. Okay. So moving further, first of all, what we are going to do. First thing that I just want to tell you is that either it is metal, either it is insoluble base, or either it is insoluble metal carbonates, we are going to take them in excess. Okay. For excess, what we are going to do? First, we are going to take an acid. Like for example, we are going to use zinc. Zinc in solid state is reacted with sulfuric acid, and they would be forming zinc sulfate, aqueous form with hydrogen gas. Okay. So what happens? First, we are going to take this sulfuric acid in it. Okay. And then we are going to add this zinc in it. Okay. First, we are going to add the spoon of zinc in it. Okay. So it would dissolve in it, and there would be a gas of hydrogen which is produced in it. Okay. We will be continuing adding H2, this zinc, unless it starts to settle at the bottom. Okay. So first point क्या है हमारे पास? Fill half a beaker with H2 sub 4, okay, and add metal, add zinc in it, continue adding zinc unless it settles down. So what do you mean by settles down? That means it then zinc becomes unreactive. It is not reacting with sulfuric acid. Okay, because acid, like every part of acid is been reacted with this metal. So now zinc becomes unreactive. It starts to settle down. So then what we are going to do? We are going to filter the solution. Okay, one more important indication is that the bubbles of H2 gas stops forming, okay, as all the zinc has been reacted. So filter the solution. So what happens? Unreacted zinc would remain at top of filter paper. Top of filter paper. Okay. Now, we are having the aqueous solution. We are having the aqueous solution. After filtering, we are having the aqueous solution of zinc sulfate. Okay. Now, what we are going to do? We are going to heat the aqueous solution of zinc sulfate. Okay. Heat the aqueous solution of zinc sulfate until until it reaches its saturated point. Its saturated point. How we are going to check the saturated point? We are going to use a glass rod. We are going to use a glass rod, we are going to put it in the solution. Then what happens? Salt would start to form at the surface. Salt would start to form at the surface. So at that point, what we are going to do? We are going to stop heating, stop heating, allow it to cool, allow it to cool. So what happens? Crystals starts to form. Crystal starts to form. And when these crystals formed, then what happens? You are going to wash the crystals with organic solvents. Wash the crystal with some organic solvent. Why we are using organic solvent? As they are soluble in water. With organic solvent. Okay. And then uh, dry the crystals in folds of filter paper. Okay. Filter paper. So this is whole process about excess math. One more important thing that I just want to discuss that the same kind of reaction happens when an insoluble base, like for example, copper oxide reacts with solid state H2SO4. So there would be forming copper sulfate and aqueous form with the generation of water in liquid form. And the same kind of procedure we are going to follow in this kind of reaction as well. Okay. Like we are going to use copper oxide in excess, and when it stops, it stops like further dissolving of copper oxide, then we are going to we are going to pass it starts to settle down, we are going to pass it through filter paper, then same kind of reaction would be happening. So let's move further towards the process of titration. Titration is also used to make soluble salts. So in this process, what we are going to do, we are going to uh, do some procedure, and that would be, okay, like first of all, there's a kind of a stand that is present in your lab, okay? And this is a retort stand, and we are going to attach this burette inside it. And there is a conical flask which is present here. So now what happens? This burette is basically graduated, and there's a conical flask. First, we are going to take, first step, we are going to take, like for example, first of all, are manufacturing NaCl by the reaction of NaOH in aqueous form and HCl in aqueous form, and they are reacted to form NaCl also in aqueous form, and then water in liquid form. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to take this titration flask. Okay, this is we can say this is a conical flask. Take conical flask and put 25 cubic centimeter of NaOH, and we can measure exact quantity of 25 cubic centimeter with pipette, with pipette, and we are going to put it in the conical flask. Now, what happens? Put methyl orange is a indicator, methyl orange indicator in flask. In flask, it turns, it turns, it turns yellow. It turns yellow. Now, start adding HCl from burette. And remember one thing, that if we are taking like HCl from the burette, then we have to put it in dropwise manner. Okay. Start adding HCl from burette. Note the point. Note the point carefully where NaOH solution change from yellow to orange. Yellow to orange. At that point, stop the flow of uh, HCl from the burette. Yellow to orange. At that point, stop the flow of HCl from burette. And at that time, what we are going to do, note the volume of HCl used. Note the volume of HCl used in neutralizing this base. HCl used in neutralizing this alkali. Okay. So now what happens? What we are going to do? Repeat the process. Now we are going to repeat the process. Repeat the process with same amount of alkali, like 25 cubic centimeter with same amount of alkali, and the same amount of acid used, okay, to neutralize it. So we are going to repeat this process. We are going to take the same amount of alkali and the same amount of acid used, and we are going to mix them together. Now, we are not going to use indicator. Indicator was just used to find the volume of HCl used to neutralize this uh, uh, base, okay? But here, we are not going to use indicator anymore because indicator would contaminate the final product. Reason is this: indicator would contaminate final product. Okay, same amount of alkali. Okay, now what we are going to do? We are going to heat the solution. Okay, the NaCl solution, heat the solution until its saturated point. The remaining process is same that we have observed in excess method. This saturated point, okay. And what we are going to do, we are going to note the at the saturated point, we are going to stop heating it and allow it to cool. So crystal starts to form, and we are going to wash those crystals with organic solvent as they are soluble salts. And then we are going to dry them in the folds of filter paper. So this is whole about our lecture from preparation of salts.